Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of your Bish Therapist podcast, a real-life therapist turned pop culture aficionado, serving clinical interpretations and hot takes on all things pop culture. And today is going to be another solo episode. Normally, the end of the month is for M&M Hour with Mandy and I. And for those of you who maybe follow her on social media or listen to her podcast may know, her dad needed some very complex heart surgery, and he had that a couple of days ago. And so I'm happy to report that number one, he is doing well, Mandy is doing well, the family is doing well, and I am constantly checking in like a psycho. But you know, Mandy and her father are wonderful people. They deserve all the love and support in the world. And I'm really grateful that they were able to get to a place that could really help them. Number two, I, am happy to do a solo episode because when my girl doesn't have the bandwidth to do it, life is more important. Those things are more important. So when will we do our next M&M Hour? I don't know, but we're going to wait and see what's best for her. And in the meantime, I have a lot to talk about today. So today, what I'm going to be talking about is mental health and addiction due to, some of the news we received this week, Robert Cosby Jr. passing away very tragically. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I also am going to share a little bit about, I've been struggling in a depressive episode over the last few weeks. So I gained some insight into that. And I want to give us all a little bit of a pep talk because I think anyone who has empathy right now in this world is suffering. We are struggling. The world is on fire. That's what it feels like anyway. The most important thing is that mental health does not exist in a vacuum. And the one thing that I think it's lost in the sauce is that when people are struggling with mental health or drug and alcohol issues and the world is on fire, that contributes to people's struggles. Mental health is health, yet it's not focused on, it's not talked about. There's still so much stigma. And so, I just want to talk a little bit about that. After that, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Southern Charm and Beverly Hills. But to be candid, today's episode is kind of going to be not so in depth. And I'm just going to do the best I can because I'm struggling today too. And I really do try to practice what I preach. But I will talk a little bit about all of those shows, some of the main issues that I feel like I observed this week. So let's start out with the very, very sad news that Robert Cosby Jr. died of a drug overdose. We found out this week, the collective Bravo sphere, we are devastated. And for people who are asking, is that normal? Yes. I want everybody listening to this to know that parasocial relationships are very real. And while we may not know, the people that we're watching, we've had a lot of celebrity deaths lately. James Van Der Beek, Eric Dane just passed away due to a long battle with ALS. And I think that what I just want people to know is that when we grow up watching people or we love a show and, we see these people, whether it's reality TV or scripted series or whatever it is, we form bonds with them. We form relationships with them. Just like people listening to this right now, if I died tomorrow, there would be people who would be very sad. Don't worry, I'm not dying tomorrow. But the point being is that I literally felt devastated because working in the addiction field, helping to treat people, seeing people die from a disease that is just awful. Addiction is a terrible disease. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. Mary has come out and on social media, she's posted pictures. She's gotten a ton of support from, literally everybody in the Bravo community. And that's one of the things that going back to these parasocial relationships is it's not just the relationship with a person, it's also the Bravo community at large. I think everyone kind of came together to give Mary support. I've been critical of Mary. I've had my concerns with her, but at this point, there's nothing to do but support her. And that's what I plan to do. The reports were that Real Housewives of Salt Lake City was in pre-production that was put on hold after Robert died. But then news came out that Mary wants to continue. And so what that means is that we will be seeing the very real, very painful grief process on next season of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And I think that losing a child, one of the things that I will tell you is early in my career, one of the first cases that I had was two parents who had lost children very tragically. And it helped inform my perspective about grief is wild, but the grief of losing a child it's kind of indescribable from my observational perspective. And I just think that I support whatever Mary feels she needs to do. Does it worry me a bit for her mental health? Sure, because, ideally I would love for her to take some space, but who the fuck am I to tell Mary how she needs to grieve or how she needs to move forward? I think also selfishly, there's a part of me that's like, it's going to be really hard to watch for all of us. But that'll be very important also. Robert and Mary, the one thing that they were able to do really successfully prior to his death was have real conversations about addiction, have real conversations about this disease and depression and all of these other things. And so I think that to honor Robert's life, it's important to have these discussions about addiction and mental health and all of that. We've lost a lot of other celebrities, but the two other people that we did lose in the last couple weeks, one is Katherine Short. She was the daughter of Martin Short. She struggled with depression and ended her life by suicide. And Robert Carradine is famous for, a million things. He was on Lizzie McGuire. He was in a ton of movies, and he had managed a very significant battle with bipolar disorder. And he also ended his life by suicide. And so here's the thing. Obviously, to me, suicide is not a dirty word. I understand why people are very cognizant about the way that they say it or talk about it or post about it on social media. But to me, suicide is end stage depression or end stage mental health issues. That's kind of the way that I look at it. I think to honor the struggle that people had, we have to be honest and real about suicide. And when I would assess with clients in session and things like that, I'm not afraid to ask people, are you suicidal? Are you thinking about self-harm? These are things as a therapist that it may seem, I know there's people that the language around this is really important for them. And I think that the term committing suicide, the reason that that is no longer used is that indicates that someone has committed a crime. And what is really happening here is people are dying due to these mental health issues. And that is kind of honoring that. Depression and anxiety, what happens is our brains lie to us. And to talk about suicide is to honor a big part of the struggle that people manage when it comes to dealing with depression. As I mentioned before, our mental health doesn't exist in a vacuum. And so for anyone who has a modicum of empathy or care about humanity or the world, when you're struggling with your depression and anxiety, it informs your perspective about you and the world, right? And yourself in relation to others, yourself in relation to the world. And I think what happens is when the world is in a really ugly place, which it is right now, it informs our mental health. It really takes a toll, even for people like myself who are vigilant. I am very self-aware. I have my own therapist. I have great insights. But I, in the last couple of weeks, slipped into a depressive episode and I kind of had no idea. So I think for me, the important thing, talking about Robert Cosby Jr., Robert Carradine, Katherine Short, is honoring that sometimes when our brains lie to us and our bodies lie to us and the world is in a really dark place, it informs our mental health. It informs our perspective of ourselves, other people, and the world. The one thing that I want to say about this is that mental health and addiction needs more funding, it needs more resources, and it needs more accessibility. And one of the hard things about this administration is that those resources have been pulled in many ways. Suicide crisis hotlines have been pulled. Veteran crisis hotlines have been pulled. There are services and resources that are much less than we have had previously. And why do I talk about that? Because that matters. When we are struggling, right? Imagine if, you have a health issue and you're like, well, I have cancer. I need to go to the doctor. And then it's like, well, there's not really anyone for you to see, or you have to pay out of pocket, or you have to do this or do that. There are just ways that mental health is given such short shrift, and the result of that is deadly. And as someone who has survived a crippling depression during the pandemic, has informed my perspective about the importance of being an advocate for myself and other people. Think about how ridiculous that would be to be diagnosed with cancer and then to be like, well, just manage it on your own. You don't need any medication. Well, what's going to happen? You're going to die. And we need to put as much money and resources and funding and time and effort into mental health, because that is a huge part of our overall health. And so what I realized over the last couple of weeks is that I was having a depressive episode, and I was just, taking care of my chronically ill body is really challenging. And there's a lot of grief in that. There's grief over, it interrupts my career. I can no longer work full time. Being a podcaster, I struggle even sometimes to do one podcast a week. I struggle to find balance. Sometimes for me, finding balance feels impossible. If I'm trying to take care of myself, I'm taking care of my grandfather, who, he's had a lot more needs since my grandmother died. He keeps forgetting that she died. And so it's kind of like a weekly talk about what's happened and all of those things. But at the end of the day, what I realized is that I cannot let the cruelty of the world strip me of my humanity. And it's easy for that to happen, right? Like, it's easy to look at the world and to be angry. We should be angry, by the way. Everyone should be furious of what's going on in the United States, what's going on in the world, it's honestly too innumerable to even mention. It's not just one thing, it's everything. It should make everyone feel rage. And so it's like, that's a healthy response. But what started to happen, I think, for me and a lot of people is then I internalize that and I get really angry and frustrated and I feel like my voice doesn't matter. So I realized that the greatest act of resistance for me is maintaining my humanity in my behaviors every day when I leave the house. I want to be the best human I can be in my interactions with other humans. I don't want to let the anger and the weight of this world make me treat people differently or badly, because I think right now the one thing we really need is each other. We need connectedness, we need support, and we need humanity. And a lot of us have lost that because it's easy to follow the leader, if I'm being honest. So what I encourage everybody to do is to look at and reframe that to maintain our humanity in this climate is an act of resistance. To maintain our sense of joy is an act of resistance. To treat ourselves and other people well, to feed our bodies, to have the courage to laugh and do all these things. These are acts of resistance. And so for me, one thing I want to share is when I was really struggling over the past couple of weeks, and especially over the weekend, I acted opposite and I did a couple of things that really helped me. And I want to share them with you all because I just hope that it helps. I moved my body and I fed my body, even though when I'm in a depressive episode, that is the last thing that I want to do. Second is, and probably most important, I should have said this first, is connecting with people that love me and not isolating. Because for me and for a lot of folks who are managing depression, what happens is we isolate and then that can get really dark. And then that's where, a lot of these things happen. Because to me, suicide is a permanent solution to temporary states. And I say temporary being like, I have struggled with depression that's lasted for years. Like my most severe depressive episode probably lasted maybe 2 years. And for other people listening to this, so like depression, you can come in and out of it and it's temporary in that it doesn't last forever, but sometimes these episodes can last a long time. But I want to share is that, my brain in my depression, my brain had told me a lot of lies. If I had given up, I wouldn't be here now. None of you would have heard my voice. I would have never seen me pivoting into this new career. I have a lot of grief over not being a therapist anymore, but being able to pivot into doing this, which is something that I never even thought I would do because I'm literally tech elderly, as many of you can probably tell. But I never would have done any of this if I had listened to that brain of mine. And sometimes when I'm in these depressive episodes, my brain still does try to trick me. But now I have the awareness, the resources, the support, and the people to reframe this is what you're feeling now. This doesn't necessarily, feelings aren't necessarily facts. I think the major message here that I want to give is that while the world seems like a very cold, harsh, awful place, there are good people in it who genuinely care and genuinely are advocates and are genuinely working harder to make things happen. And so what I realized in the pep talk that I want to give everybody is that I realized that I need to be the humanity in the world that I want to see, but that starts with myself. Self-compassion is one of those very, very important skills that most people, myself included, really struggle with. That is probably the one thing that because of messages that I received growing up, self-compassion, I really had to teach myself. I had to relearn it because my factory default setting when something happens is to be hard on myself, way harder than I need to be. And it doesn't help anything and it just makes me feel bad. So I think one of the other pieces of feedback that I have about something that I did that was really helpful is just having self-compassion and understanding that this is a lot with my body, with the world, and whether you're chronically ill or not, what's happening in this world is a lot. It's jarring. And it's also really sad to see, and it's sad to feel, there's a lot of feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. So here's the pep talk and the message that I want to give is that we need to have agency over, we can't change the world, but what ways can we contribute? And those might be small ways in terms of donating to a cause that you feel passionate about, volunteering in your local community, local shelters or nursing homes, whatever it may be, volunteering opportunities to help enrich your community, using your voice on whether it be on social media, with family, with just people in the world. I think using our voice is really important. And so between, attending to yourself, having self-compassion, but then also there's that action piece that I think is really important to help people get out of the tough mindsets that we've been in for a while. So moving your body, getting sun on your face, feeding your body, doing something to advocate. This is my sharing my experience, strength, and hope. This is one of the ways that I can use my voice. I can use my platform for good. I can honor Robert Cosby Jr. I can honor these people who have struggled and are no longer here. And I can try to help other people in the process of it all. And I think that's pretty damn cool for me. But there are very real good things happening. And, I don't want to get lost in all of that. And hopefully sharing this helps everyone to kind of take stock and think critically about, for you, what have you been struggling with that you can take some agency over, that you can do a little bit differently to help get out of that spot. Recovery is possible. I am proof. I was joking on a podcast. Whenever I tell people about my chronic health issues, they're like, well, I hope you feel better soon. And I'm like, thanks. I literally never will. I will literally never feel better, which is, kind of inherently challenging and depressing. But of course, I laugh about it because I love my dark humor. Maybe we can't change the world and we certainly can't change our bodies. And there's a lot of things we can't change, but it's looking at what can we change? What can we do? And all those small ways and the sense of autonomy and the ways that we manage ourselves, that really, really matters. One of the things with the Olympics is that, Alyssa Liu is, this amazing ice skater who, she was known for her frenulum piercing and her, funky hair and all of that. But she's a really great example of how She took agency over her own life. She was like, I don't want to do this anymore, did things that made her happy. And now look at where she is. And I just think that ultimately the best thing that we can win in life is just like happiness amidst the chaos. And that's a hard ask. That's a really hard ask. So I hope that some of what I said today has been helpful for you all. I'm sorry if it was rambly, because one of the things for me when I'm struggling in a depressive episode and with my body, I get a lot of brain fog. And to be honest, some days that I'm like, I can't even believe that I can do any of this, that I can say words out of my mouth that make any sense, that I have anyone who wants to listen to it. It's just every day, it's just all miraculous for me. So for everyone who is struggling, you're not alone. Connect with people who love you and who are empathetic witnesses. Don't connect with people who don't serve you and who can't serve you. Connect with yourself, most importantly. I think disconnection to ourselves is one of the first things to really challenge us, and just do things that are good for your mind, body, and soul. That is my message today. So let me get into some Bravo stuff, because a couple days ago, I actually had two interesting interactions. So I posted about Southern Charm, specifically the Craig and Vanita situation and just Craig in general. And I cannot tell you how much vitriol my post garnered just by simply saying that I feel that Vanita gets treated differently than her other cast members in the exact same situations, which for those of you who listened to my last episode with Nimade, we talked about racism and misogyny on Southern Charm and, the very real microaggressions that are happening with Vanita. But what I learned in real time is that there are just people in this world who are really happy to be tools for the patriarchy. And what I mean by that is that the patriarchy needs women to cut down other women, to support men and the things that they're doing. And I understand it's not as reductive as that. But when I posted about Vanita and Craig, the amount of Team Craig I got was out of control. So for those of you who didn't watch the latest episode of Southern Charm, Craig basically got so drunk, so intoxicated that he was obviously in a blackout. In the one episode, he got drunk and screamed at two different women. But for some reason, the situation with Vanita, everyone's like, well, Vanita sucks. It's her fault. I have never seen someone on Bravo get more hate than Vanita. I'm not even joking. And I can't help but outline the underlying racism and misogyny of that. And, listen, is Vanita perfect? No. Is she always right? Definitely not. Do you have to like Vanita? Also, no. But I think that the vitriol, the way that people talk about Vanita too, which by the way, can I just say, one thing that I absolutely despise about social media, I'll go to make a comment and Instagram will be like, well, this doesn't seem supportive. Are you sure you want to make this comment? And it's like, what the hell am I even saying? Oh, I'm not a troll on the internet. I don't do that. So I'm like, okay. And then I just don't comment. And then someone was able to comment about how Vanita is a cunt in my comments, which by the way, for me, my community is one of those things that I have autonomy over, and I can control that. I have agency over that. And so the one thing I don't agree with other content creators about is that, sometimes people feel that all engagement is fine. And I'm like, no, I don't need trolls in my comments. I don't need people in my comments attacking other people who think differently than they do or all these other things. So I keep my moderation tight. I block people. I get people out of there. I delete comments because I don't just need the engagement. But I think that we watched Craig literally scream at Sally. With Vanita, he told her to fuck off and you don't exist in my world, which again, I think telling a woman of color that she doesn't exist or trying to get her out of this group is really wild. And then yelling at Sally that, she's a loser and all these other things. So let me be clear about something. Craig has said that he's an addict and his behaviors prove that he's accurate. I'm not Craig's therapist. I don't diagnose people, but anyone with a modicum of an observational skill can tell you that he is misusing alcohol and there are problems. When you are drinking all day long and you cannot stop drinking, and he said Craig said in one of his kind of like drunken slurs, he was like, I feel like Jack Sparrow. I love drinking rum. And then he slurred, it's never enough. Okay. So that's a real problem. And it is making me wild how people on the internet are like, Team Craig. And I'm like, well, the patriarchy needs women to tear other women down and to support men doing really shitty things. And so all those Team Craig people, sorry, but I think that's what's going on. Because when you look at a man who has a pattern of getting intoxicated and yelling at women, and he does it twice in one episode, and you're going to be Team Craig, I think we got to look at what that's about for people. And I'm certainly not going to be a part of that problem. No, I'm not. But the interesting thing that I knew that I was onto something is that Leva Bonaparte came into Yabish's post. She liked the post and she responded to a comment about, the racism and the misogyny and things like that Vanita's dealing with. And Leva, her comment was clapping emojis. And so for me, Leva and, these people are humans in real life outside of the show. And if Leva is someone who is another person of color who's, she's not on Southern Charm a whole lot. She's, kind of in and out and here on there. She has her own show, Southern Hospitality. I think for Vanita to have a friend in Leva and for Leva to comment on my post and to like it, who she in real life is friends with Vanita and understands what it is to be a woman of color in this group, that tells me that I'm onto something. So people may not like it. I think that one thing we've learned from this world is that racism is alive and well. And calling it out is not popular for some insane reason. And I'm never going to not call it out. That's just, I don't care if I lose followers. I don't care if people don't listen to me on this podcast anymore. I am never going to stop calling out the racism, misogyny, patriarchy, all of it. That's just, sorry. But when Leva came in and she, had those little pieces of information, I just thought, I'm grateful that I can truly be an advocate because I find it so wild that last reunion, everyone is like, I'm afraid of Craig. I'm afraid of him. Everyone's afraid of his anger. Everyone's afraid of his acting out. And yet he continues to be on the show. He continues to do the same behavior over and over. I understand that he's grieving about his relationship with Paige, and that's valid. But these behaviors aren't new. These aren't because he broke up with Paige. These are behaviors that have been around for a long time. I'll be interested to see next episode of Southern Charm because I want to know where it left off. Was Craig just standing up in the van screaming? Vanita said on Watch What Happens Live that Sally texted her in real time because she was scared. Austin was scared. Craig's behavior is scary. I mean, he's identified as an addict and that behavior matches up with that. So I think he has some insight. I just think Kyle and Craig really, to me, are cut from the same cloth. They are people who act badly, they behave badly, they over-rely on alcohol, then they act out, they behave badly, and then they want to blame other people for their problems. And I just don't support that. I have to be responsible for who I am, the things that come out of my mouth, what I say. And being angry is not an excuse to use people as a whipping post. And I'm using that term very pointedly, okay? Craig uses people as a whipping post. He gets angry and his response is, well, you've made me angry, so now you have to deal with the backlash. And if I'm being honest, there's some wild rationalization in that I see with domestic violence, which it's well, you made me mad. Well, you made me do this. And it's no. You did this because you didn't want to manage your feelings and you wanted to take it out on somebody else. It has nothing to do with the other person. This is you. And so after decades of holding people accountable, this isn't going to stop just because I'm watching people on TV. And people need to be held accountable. That's how it goes. And I just want to know when Craig is going to be held accountable. I want to know. So I guess I'll just sit over here and quietly wait to figure that out. And I'll talk about what happens next week. But the other thing, not only did Leva come into Yabish's Instagram, so did Denise Richards. Denise Richards' news broke, I guess, a couple months ago that her piece of shit ex, Aaron Pfeiffer's, who I've already done an episode, by the way. You can look back. I don't remember what episode it was, but I did an episode about Aaron Pfeiffer's being a con man because he had this wellness facility and he ended up basically bilking people with cancer, just like scamming them out of their money. And then one of them died. And just he like moved so he didn't have to like pay the money back. It's all in the podcast episode. So please go and check that out. If I can, I'll find what episode it is and share it next time I'm on the podcast. But recently, despite the egregious abuse that Denise has suffered, she was ordered by a judge to pay Aaron spousal support. And I lost my mind. And what I said is, this is why survivors don't come forward. They are victimized and then they are re-victimized by the system. Domestic violence should have severe consequences. And Denise responded, RHOBH therapist, you are correct. The abuse doesn't stop, and no spousal is typically not awarded to the abuser, let alone legal fees. So her comment helped me to understand that not only is she being forced to pay spousal support, she's being forced to pay his legal fees. And so if people want to know why I speak out about misogyny, this is why, because it's fucking bullshit. And unfortunately, Denise is not the first survivor to experience this, and she certainly won't be the last. But I will not be quiet about the fuckery that is the quote unquote legal system. All these systems are so broken. The legal system, the healthcare system, it's just like on and on and on. And for someone who abused her to get spousal support and have his legal fees paid, there's just no words. So I said to Denise, I said, we love you, we support you, and we will advocate for you all damn day. Now, we didn't have any conversations outside of that, but I'm also glad to know that I am doing the right thing, that I am on the right track, that I am advocating for people. And here's why this matters. Because when people are survivors of abuse and they come forward and then they're re-victimized by the ways that either police don't listen to them or society doesn't listen to them or the legal system doesn't listen to them, or God forbid, it's not just you're not listened to, it's more harm is done. There are people who love and support and see exactly what's going on. That is one of the things I don't want to get lost in the sauce. For people who are struggling with domestic violence, who are survivors of abuse and all these other things, you are seen, you are heard, you are valid. And there are people who will fight to the death for you. And I am one of them. So I'm just really grateful that I can do that. I'm grateful to have had that interaction with Denise, because she needs to know that people know that this is bullshit and that she deserves better than that. Denise is truly, I think, one of the greatest humans, and she just deserves a lot better than she's been given. Speaking of Denise Richards, I wanted to talk a little bit about Beverly Hills, because the rumor is that Amanda Francis is going to be out and that Lisa Rinna is going to be coming back. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that, but I want Denise back. Like, I want Denise back on our screens. I think that she got really hosed in her last season that she was on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And now I look back on it and I just think like all the abuse she probably suffered as a result of like that storyline of Brandy being like, well, we had sex or whatever. And it's like, you know, it just makes me look at her time on the show with a different lens. And so I would really love to see her come back and to see her get better treatment than she deserved the first time. But the thing that I wanted to say about Beverly Hills is that to me, this episode of Beverly Hills was amazing for two reasons. Amanda wasn't in it. And honestly, I think having her not be a part of it allowed, and then like the two groups. So Rachel Zoe, who is clearly the best newbie to ever come to Bravo. There are so many people saying that they think Rachel should have center diamond and Kyle needs to retire. And the thing is that I hate when people are talking about, let's take these people's jobs, right? Because how would you feel if someone was like trying to take your job? I'm not necessarily saying Kyle needs to not be there, but I think that what I said last time I talked about this, I remain steadfast, is that audiences want emotional intelligence. They want EQ. They want vulnerability. They don't want storyline. They don't want bullshit. They want real shit. I guess unless it's Craig. Then Craig, they're just like, oh, we'll take anything. And so when we see these groups separate, we see each and every one of them have some vulnerable moments. We see Rachel, Kyle, and Dorit go shopping, and we see Dorit go on a literal shopping spree, spending $5,000, and she's claiming she's not buying as much or as compulsively. but she says she treats herself. She's like maybe more than the fair amount. And so I think number one, this puts some context into Dorit a little bit. But number two, what I didn't like is that Kyle was FaceTiming Bose and saying that Dorit has been behaving in a manic or an OCD manner. And then she was like citing examples that Dorit arrived late to the plane without a passport or real ID and then spending large amounts of money. And so what I don't like, people will weaponize mental health all day, every day. It happens all the time. And when Kyle did that, I was like, no, ma'am. I like Kyle. And some people call me a Kyle apologist, but this is why I'm not an anything apologist, because I call people on their shit that I'm perceiving. So I don't stand Kyle enough to say that that's cool. That's not cool. Bose called out Kyle in the confessional. I wish he would have said this to Kyle in person, but it's like, so Kyle is warning Dorit about talking badly about PK on camera, but Kyle's happy to talk badly about Dorit on camera. Make that make sense. And also, women who are in the process of getting divorced, for Kyle to throw out that she's manic or has this OCD stuff, that has very real consequences, possibly for Dorit in terms of her custody. And now, is Dorit doing things on camera that's her agency, that's her autonomy? She can get herself in trouble if she wants, yes. But I don't like Kyle weaponizing the mental health piece. Kyle is in no position to know anything about mania or OCD unless she's been diagnosed with, and mania is not a diagnosis. Mania is a symptom. So bipolar disorder used to be called manic depression, and that's just not descriptive, and that's not what it's called anymore. So the mania can be a symptom of a lot of things, sometimes even trauma. And so I just don't like the weaponizing of it. I don't like it. And I don't think Kyle should have done that. And I think that Kyle's not Dorit's friend. So I just felt really icky about that. But the other thing I wanted to say about Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is that Erica had a therapy session with Dr. Jen Mann, and she was talking about, being really upset because she has these trials looming over her. She's being sued for $24 million based on the Tom Girardi stuff, and she has a $10 million tax bill. Erica cried, feeling like her worst nightmare's coming true. And so Dr. Mann said something that had people kind of on the fence, and I just wanted to explain a little bit. So Dr. Mann reframed that this isn't the worst thing that happens to you. It's happened to Tom because of where he is. And she's saying to Erica, you're now in a safe home and a safe relationship. Dr. Mann was trying to say like how in the now, Erica is safe and okay. And then Erica admitted the now sucks. Okay. So let me give you my thoughts on this, is that sometimes as therapists, this is, I think, the danger of doing a therapy session on TV with editing and all of that, because I don't know what was edited or what was not. What I think Dr. Mann was trying to say, it's the skill to live in the here and now, is that I want to appreciate and have gratitude for the things that I have that others may not have. And mindfulness, the concept and skill of mindfulness is literally like saying, in the here and now, everything is okay, right? So for example, in the here and now, I am not dying. I'm fine. In the here and now, I'm talking to you all and I'm doing something great. In the here and now, I'm safe and I'm comfortable. But that doesn't mean that outside of the here and now, things aren't really challenging. So what I saw of Dr. Mann is that she was trying to say to Erica, well, be careful before you catastrophize, because you're not in jail, you're in a safe home, but there are these very real pending things. I mean, like $34 million, I don't care how much you make on Real Housewives, and Erica Jane, like as a career and all that, I mean, that's going to be impossible to pay. And that's a huge, huge weight on Erica. And I think that in therapy, you have to be really careful, because we don't want to use a toxic positivity of like, well, things could be worse, because that's toxic positivity bullshit. And I don't think Dr. Mann was doing that. But I also think that Erica needed to hear, it also sucks. Like, yes, you're safe, but it also sucks. Like Erica, when Denise was on, she shared her story of being a survivor of domestic violence in a relationship that she got into after Tom Girardi. And I think that it's like, there's so much grief for Erica wrapped up in, well, I had this life. That was great. And then the rug was pulled from under me. I made this choice and I got in this relationship. And that was even worse than the stuff with Tom. It was like physical, domestic violence. And I think that what Erica needs is validation and reflection and understanding of that. And to be fair, Dr. Mann may have given her that, and that may have been edited out. And the way that the therapy session was edited looked like she was being pretty insensitive and giving bad advice, to be honest. Like the advice of like, well, you have a $34 million bill looming over your head, but at least you're safe. It's like, well, I mean, financial safety is a part of being safe, right? So there's a lot that wasn't discussed, which like people have asked me, would you ever do like a therapy session like taped? And I'm like, I don't think that I ever would for that exact reason, because that's something that's sacred and private. And I just don't think is for cameras. But since she brought it to camera, I'm happy to talk about it. So speaking of the domestic violence, is that Erica talked about sharing her domestic violence experience when she saw Denise. And she talked about the shame in admitting to being abused and not wanting to call police because it would be a bigger issue. Also, her son is a police officer, which makes it more shameful. And so going back to the Denise stuff is that there's so many reasons why women and people don't come forward, because women aren't the only ones who are subject to domestic abuse, by the way, right? All humans, all genders, all orientations, all ethnicities, everyone is vulnerable to these experiences. But this is why people don't come forward, because they're victimized and then they're re-victimized over and over and over again. And these are very real things. And so I'm glad that Erica talked about that, because that is something that is really valuable to talk about and have people hear. So Erica cried about carrying the shame and then asked if she had made the right decision. And so what I will say is that shame dies in the presence of an empathetic witness, and using our voice is powerful and valuable. So sharing our truth, it's not always going to feel good. It's going to feel very hard. But the thing is, it's so important for us to do it. But it's also important for us to do it with people who can attend to that properly. We don't want to be sharing with people who have victimized us or who are not capable or competent in attending to us. So I think that's the key here with that skill. And I'm just really grateful that they talked about it. And now the last thing that I'll say about this is that Dr. Mann talked about the fallacy about like humans tend to think, well, if I just get through this hard time, I'll skate into paradise. And it's like, no. What I've learned being a human being, a therapist, all of it has taught me that adulthood is basically one shit show after another, literally. And I hope people have cackled in their cars as I've said that, because it's like, it is so true that adulthood is truly just one hard shit show after another. That is a fallacy to think I'll get through this hard part to get to the good next part. There's no such thing. Life is accepting that the good and bad and the ugly coexist. And that is literally what life is. But the thing that Erica talked about was she survived by dissociating. And dissociating is when people are disconnected from their bodies, usually as a result of trauma, because it's overwhelming and our brains and our bodies can check out. And that's what dissociating is. But no one talks about how scary it is to reconnect to a dissociated body. So it's almost like, imagine like plugging back in to a body that is full of unresolved pain. And it's pain that we've worked so hard to escape. We've dissociated. We've used all these maybe unhealthy coping skills. So to get better, we have to reconnect into that pain. And that feels like a shitstorm, like I don't think people talk about enough. But the good thing is, on the other side of that is freedom. On the other side of that is agency and autonomy and self-compassion and healing and love and all of that. It's just, you got to get through the pain to get to the good stuff. And then once you're on the side of that, then it's easier to manage the shit show that is adulthood, the ups and downs of it, if you're in that better space with your body, if that makes sense. I think that's going to be it for me today. I was going to talk a little bit about Summer House, but I'm going to practice what I preach and model that I've kind of had it for today. I'm exhausted. I did good things today. I went and I met some girlfriends for lunch that I haven't seen in a while. I, talked with my grandfather and all of those things. But, I think I need to attend to myself. And for today, I'm kind of done. So thank you so much for listening to the rambling and the, all of it today. I'm just, I'm not on the top of my game. And, for me, it feels a little bit shameful to have people see that, but acting opposite is one of the greatest skills that I can model and also talk about is that, using our voice, it's not perfect. It's not always going to be eloquent, but we should use it anyway. Expressing ourselves isn't always going to be perfect. It may not always be exactly what we want, but we should do it anyway. So I guess the last thought that I'll leave you with is that I hope some of this resonated with people. And I think the greatest gift we can give ourselves sometimes is to act opposite and do things that are maybe not our factory default setting, but they're what's good for us now. So me acting opposite is, reaching out and hanging out with people, even though I have to do a podcast, knowing that my brain is going to be tired and maybe I won't be on top of my game, but the reconnection was important and, that sort of stuff. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening today. I appreciate you all very much. Just know that life is tough, but so are we. There is nothing that we cannot persevere through with the right support and self-compassion and resources and help and love. And I just want to leave everybody on that note. So for today, I'm going to send love to you and yours and say ta-ta for now. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your RHOBH therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, or hear on YBT podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.